A new deadline for the Department of Justice to provide a federal judge with information about last weekend's deportation flights has come and gone. The flights carried hundreds of Venezuelan nationals to El Salvador. The Trump administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport 137 of them. But a federal court judge says the flights violated a temporary restraining order demanding the flights return to the U.S. The DOJ handed a late court filing to Judge James Boasberg yesterday. The judge called it woefully insufficient. He demanded more information be delivered this morning ahead of a hearing later this afternoon. CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane has more details from Washington. So, Scott, again, just for our audience to understand, what happened and what can the judge do in order to hold whoever was responsible for this deportation accountable?
Unequivocally, Vlad, this is a potentially landmark standoff that's unfolding before our eyes. The Department of Justice didn't miss a deadline from this federal judge. They've missed a series of deadlines day after day from this judge. And if you don't like a judge's order, you can't simply disobey it or disregard it. You appeal it. That's not quite what's happening in this case. So you have this showdown this afternoon, midday in Washington, where the judge has called at least some members of the Department of Justice to appear before him to answer some questions. Now, he has had a series of questions about those deportations last Saturday. When did the planes take off? When did they clear U.S. airspace? When did they land? He hasn't gotten answers to those questions. He's gotten arguments from the Department of Justice why they don't believe they should answer those questions. The Chief Judge James Boasberg, longtime figure in the Washington, D.C. federal courthouse, not a household name, but in the legal circles, he is a famous name. And he recognizes the significance of what's happening here. This is the front line of a standoff between the administration and the federal courts, and we are going to see how he carries it this afternoon at the next hearing.
We were talking about this earlier, Scott, on the set of CBS Mornings between us. In years past, for example, governors have rejected orders from the federal government. Most famously, during the segregation fights of the 1960s, the president of the United States was able to order National Guard troops to allow students to enter schools. But in this case, this is the federal government rejecting a justice's order. And so the question becomes, what is that mechanism? In the case of the 1950s and 60s, the president could do something. Here, it is the president who's rejecting these orders.
That's a good question, and I don't want to understate the significance of these deportations of 200-plus Venezuelan nationals, a particularly important moment in itself. But this has become so much bigger and wider than just that issue. This is a fundamental face-off between two branches of government that has the potential to become destabilized. We don't know what's going to happen next. The judge kind of set the table last night in the court docket for a possible contempt finding against somebody inside the Department of Justice. But that is a provocative notion, no matter what's been happening in this case, Vlad, because you know who signed their name to these filings for the Department of Justice? The U.S. Attorney General herself, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, the number 3 official, Emil Bove, and the Chief of Staff of the Department of Justice. These are not low-ranking line prosecutors. This is the Department of Justice. It's not clear what happens next, and that's why this is such a fascinating and potentially important hearing today. It's the first step into finding out what's next.
All right, Scott MacFarlane for us, reporting from Washington. Scott, thank you very much.